Hello everyone and welcome to the weekly Soul of the Parasha Shiur. We have reached the Parasha Bo. Bo means come. It is God calling Moses, telling him come to Paro and let him know about the final three plagues. Bo is the second Parasha after Va'era last week that talks about the 10 plagues. 7 of the plagues were described in the previous portion, and now we're talking about the last 3 plagues, culminating of course in the plague of the killing of the firstborn of all Egypt. Now, in addressing these stories, of course, when we're coming from a Hasidic perspective, we're talking about the inner dimension of the Torah. We're not just reading things on a simple level, we're going deeper, and we're trying to understand what Egypt symbolizes within us in a more spiritual way, because the coming out of Egypt was a historical event, but now we want to relive it and reenact it in some way each and every day. We're mentioning the coming out of Egypt in our prayers every day. So we want to find an inner spiritual psychological meaning to all these stories. And so when we're talking about Egypt, we have to understand what Egypt means, and then what the enslavement of the Jewish people means, and what is the coming out of Egypt means. Now, to our aid, and this is our first source for today, comes a Hasidic, a very simple, very basic Hasidic idea. It appears in a book called Hayom Yom. Hayom Yom means everyday life, or everyday proverbs. It's a book of Hasidic sayings, Hasidic proverbs that were all said by the previous Rebbe of Chabad, and collected and turned into a book by his son-in-law, the last Rebbe of Chabad. It's called a Yom Yom, and it has a proverb or a saying for each and every day of the year. So the Yom Yom for today, the day that I'm recording this, Dalet Shvat, the 4th day of Shvat, is the following. It says, Mitzrayim, Egypt, expresses constriction and limitation. The word Mitzrayim in Hebrew can also be read as Meitzarim, and Meitzarim means straits. Straits as in something that constrains me and that limits me, narrows me down. We can also use the image of maybe of a straitjacket. Mitzrayim is a bit of a straitjacket. The spiritual Egyptian exile is the animal souls restricting and concealing the godly soul so severely that the godly soul is compressed to the degree that it is diminished and obscured. So Egypt within us represents our own animal soul, something that's limited, that's narrowing, that's constricting, that doesn't enable our true, highest, godly soul to shine out and reveal itself. And this is something, of course, we have to deal with every day. So every day we're trying to get out of Egypt. Exodus from Egypt, the Yetziat Mitzrayim, is the removal of the constriction and bounds. It doesn't mean getting rid of the animal soul. The animal soul is here; it's part of us. We have to learn how to live with it. But it's coming out from being enslaved to it, from being bound and forced to follow its own desires or limited vision of things. And what does it mean? So what does it mean, the removal of constriction? It means the intellect in the brain. The intellect in the brain being the part of us, the part of the divine soul that isn't enslaved. There's always a part. Even when the people of Israel were enslaved, there was a part of them that kept its head above the water, so to speak, and would cry to Hashem, was able to pray to Hashem, and still believe that there's a salvation, that salvation is possible. So the intellect in the brain really reflects the part of the divine soul that isn't limited, that's still free. Even people in prison, as we know, would say that my body is imprisoned by in my soul, in my head, I'm still free. So the intellect in the brain, the part that's free, needs to illuminate the heart. The light has to sort of filter down or go down from the head, the free part of us, to the enslaved part of us, which is the heart. The heart is enslaved within Egypt. Egypt is a bit like a shell, like an external shell or a straitjacket that's covering the heart, and we need to use the part that's free, the head, in order to illuminate the heart, pour down light over the heart, soften the heart, and make the heart also come out of slavery, bringing about the fine character traits, subtle, holy character traits, and then, of course, translate it into actual practice. So that's the first source we have. So therefore, when we're going back to the story, now we have a general understanding of things. Going back to the story, we need to understand, so what do the 10 plagues mean? So the 10 plagues are like 10 steps or 10 actions or things that we do within ourselves in order to free ourselves gradually, more and more, each part of us from these constraints. Now, when we're getting to the final plague, which is the harshest one, of course, the killing of the firstborn of Egypt, which is really hitting at the heart of those negative emotions or negative patterns that we've become enslaved to. Something very, very strange is one very strange verse appears, and that's the verse that we want to focus on today. So the verse appears, the following verse. This is Exodus 11, verses 6 to 7. והייתה צעקה גדולה בכל ארץ מצרים, אשר כמוהו לא נהייתה וכמוהו לא תוסיף. There shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as was not like it before, nor shall be like it again. Because this is the final harshest blow. But then, so the next verse, this is the one I'm talking about. The next verse says, I'll read it directly from the English, but against the children of Israel, not a dog shall make a sound. In Hebrew, it's something like not a dog shall steer its tongue or move its tongue. It's not just barking, it's any kind of sound. Not a dog shall make a sound against man or beast, that you may know that the Lord, that Hashem, makes a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. So all of the plagues were making a difference, because when the plague of blood took place, then the Hebrew people's water was clean, and the frogs didn't touch the Hebrew people, and so on. But this time, the separation is the most severe, and this is the final act, or the final moment of redemption, of, again, going back to our own spiritual journeys, the ultimate salvation of the divine soul from the constraints of the animal soul. Now, the detail we want to focus on is the dog. What is this dog all about? What does it mean? Lo yicheratz kelev leshono. Not a dog shall make a sound. Lemi'ish v'ad against neither man nor beast. What does this dog symbolize? So, in order, whenever we reach such a, so obviously, again, there's a pshat, there's a simple reading, but there's also a deeper reading, and we need to understand what the dog symbolizes. In order to sort of unpack or unravel the meaning of the dog image, we need to find Torah connotations. So we have to start with Torah connotations. And beautifully, the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, the Gemara, tells us that there are two main verses talking about dogs. And you go over the Bible, you see two main verses that mention dogs. One is very positive, and the other is very negative. So the positive verse is the one we just read. But against the children of Israel, not a dog shall make a sound against man or beast. And the negative one is in Isaiah 56:11. The dogs have a mighty appetite. In Hebrew, it's v'haklavim azei nefesh. They have a mighty soul, or it's not one of the highest words for soul. It's one of the lowest words for soul. It means one of the lower base levels of the soul. And in this case, it means appetite, because the continuation is they are never satiated, they're never full, they never have enough, they want more and more and more. So we have, on the one hand, dogs that were somehow cooperating with the divine miracle, making sure, almost like angels, making sure that no Hebrew firstborn is touched, and sort of being very silent, marveling even maybe, at how it's now becoming very clear that the Egyptians are the ones to be punished, that the animal soul is the one to be transcended, and the Hebrew, the Israelites, are the ones that are released. That is, that the divine soul within each of us is now being released, and they march. So that's a very positive description. And then on the other hand, we have this very, very negative one. And in fact, when the Talmud says this, it says the following, and we'll try to get a deeper understanding of this also. It says there's a whole section in the Talmud that talks about dreams and about understanding dream symbols. And of course, dreams have to do with subconscious and very deep understanding of imagery or symbols. So it says, one who sees a dog in a dream, this is a whole series of the descriptions in the Talmud that talk about different things you may see in a dream. One who sees a dog in a dream should rise early and immediately recite the positive verse. But against any of the children of Israel, not a dog should make a sound. Before, why do we have to do this quickly? Before maybe a more immediate verse that may come to mind is the second verse. The negative verse, the dogs have a mighty appetite, they're never satiated. Klavim azei nefesh. You have to be careful not to have that other negative pasuk be the immediate association that you interpret the dream with. And the idea is, as is explained there in the Talmud, it says that the meaning of the dream is totally dependent on the interpretation. If you find a good interpretation, it becomes a good omen. If you find a bad interpretation, it becomes a bad omen. So it's up to you. And then, so again, there's the more natural, immediate association is the negative verse, but you have to overcome it, overcome the immediate negative association, and say to yourself, no, this was a good dream. The dog in my dream was like one of the dogs in Egypt that was silent against when he saw the 10th plague. So now we have sort of the beginning of like a first step in understanding what we're talking about, but it's not enough, because it's still very unclear what it means that the dogs in Egypt were somehow took part of this miracle enough so that they would be mentioned. So we have to take another step, and another step, again, looking from a Torah inner perspective at symbols. So one was taking the verses, or two main verses, and the other one is looking at the word for dog in Hebrew. So the word for dog in Hebrew is kelev. And kelev can be read, sometimes words can be read in several ways. So this is, the little dots are the ways to pronounce the three letters. And the three letters remain the same, but we can read them in another way. We can read them as kelev. Lev means heart in Hebrew. And ke, the first letter, is also a letter that suggests or that means as or like something. It's called kaf hadimyon. The kaf, that's the letter, the kaf of likeness. So kelev is like a heart, as a heart, similar to a heart. Kelev is like a heart. In a way, you can say that a dog is the embodiment of emotions. The dog is either very, very happy or is very, very sad, and he's either happily wiggling his tail, or his tail is sort of drooped, and he's just so emotional, and you can see, and that's why people relate to dogs so much, because they reflect something very simple about their emotions. And in fact, the sages, Chazal, they break it up in a little different way, and they say that it's a kelev is kulo lev. It's all heart, because kelev can also be broken apart into kol, all, and lev, heart. So kelev could also be kulo lev. It's all heart. The kelev is all heart. So now, when we're going back to the first source we opened, the Yom Yom said, what is the Exodus from Egypt? The Exodus from Egypt is illuminating the heart using the head. We have the head, and the head should illuminate the heart. And this is really an idea that comes from the Zohar. And the Zohar says, Moach shalit al halev. The head, or the brain, should govern the heart. The intellect should govern the emotions. And when we think about this idea, so we can understand this idea, because the emotions are fickle and they're short-sighted and they're misleading in some way, and the head has to govern the heart, the intellect that is more lucid and more objective and far-sighted should rule over the heart. But this only goes along with the negative understanding of the word kelev, or kelev, as a heart. Kelev symbolizes a heart, but having two verses, different, one positive, one negative, verses talking about the heart, suggests that there are two aspects to what we mean by the word heart, or by the word emotions. So when we're talking about moch shalit al lev, the head governing the heart, that only works when you're thinking about the negative verse of dogs, right? The verse that came before that says that they have a mighty appetite, they have desires that can never be satiated. Some interpreters talk about the desire for food, as is the more simple reading. Also, they talk about the desire for sexual desire that also, when it's not constrained, or when you don't govern it in some way, you can become addicted. It can become unsatiated. But what can we do with the positive verse? For the positive verse, it doesn't seem appropriate to say that the head should govern the heart, because the heart has some good things also. The heart may have intuitions that are maybe even go far deeper than what the intellect can perceive. And we know, of course, in modern history, we had the two most major movements that have created modernity or secularism. One was the Enlightenment, or or science, that was all about transcending emotions and thinking clearly and lucidly and being skeptical about things. And the other great movement that was the foundation of art more than science was the Romanticism. And the Romanticism said the very opposite. It said intellect is very limited, and it doesn't really touch the deep core of things, and you need the emotions, and you need the heart over the head, not the head over the heart. So there's a beautiful, beautiful Hasidic idea that goes like this. It says, well, the Zohar said moach shalit al halev, the head, the moach, should rule over the heart, right? But then comes Hasidut, and Hasidut says, well, that's absolutely true, but it's only part of the truth. Moach shalit al halev is what it really means is that the head should govern the outer heart, chitzoniyut halev, the external part, or the exterior of the heart, the more superficial levels of the heart, those that are the sexual desires and the food desires and the desire for wealth and desire for being famous, and so all these more egoistical, base, lowly drives that come more from the heart than they do come from the head. And the head should govern them, should put them in check, should come out of them, and that's a bit like they're the Egypt. They constrain us. They don't let our true, higher, divine self come about and be revealed. So we need to overcome them. But there is also another level, another aspect of what the word heart, or emotions, or the emotional level refers to, and that is pnimiyut halev. Pnimiyut halev is the inner heart, the inner dimension, the inner layers, the deeper layers, not the superficial ones of the heart. And those should govern the head. So the Zohar idiom was head over heart, and the Hasidic complementation or completion of the idea is the inner heart over the head. The inner heart should govern the head. Now these two levels, these two aspects of the heart, of course, correspond to the two verses we've seen. So when we're talking about governing our heart and ruling our heart and putting our heart in check, we're just talking about that's what is symbolized by the negative dog verse, that they're unsatiated and they have mighty appetites. But there is also the positive dog, or the positive level of the heart. Again, kelev kmo lev, as a heart that is higher, and it's the very opposite. And now we can have a deeper understanding of the whole waking up from a dream about a dog scenario. The dreaming of a dog is really like having an intense emotional experience, or an emotional intuition. It's not a rational intuition. It's not something that the intellect has produced. It's something that is like a dream. It comes out, and it shows us a dog, which is really our heart. And then it's up to us what to do with this, because if we're overcome by the association of the negative verse, that means we're directing this intuition into the outer heart, the external, superficial, very overly excited and not for a good reason aspects of the emotions. But if we overcome this as immediate association, we think about the positive verse, the dogs that were silent during the final plague that separated the Hebrews from the Egyptians, or the divine soul from the animal soul. If we think about that, then we're channeling the intuition towards the inner heart. Or put it in another way, whenever we have a strong emotion and the brain is sort of skeptical regarding it, we should try and use the brain, use the head, use the intellect to sort of separate what, out of this emotional experience, what is the inner, deeper, sort of divine spark that's there, that comes from the inner heart, and what is all the rest of the baggage or the externality or the outside experience that was just overly excited, but again, not for a good reason. And we have to fight to separate. This is why we have the head over, sort of in between the outer heart and the inner heart. The head is what enables us. This is why the Yom Yom spoke about illuminating the heart and getting out the finer, attributes, the more subtle attributes, is really finding the inner heart within the outer heart. That's why we need the intellect or the rational part. The rational is able to differentiate between the sub-rational, lower Egypt-like dogs or hearts, and between the higher and more subtle divine heart. So again, we this now that we know that the dog symbolizes the heart, and the two verses of the dog symbolize the two aspects of the heart, and we need to understand more deeply. We have to now go back to the original verse. Here we are, that there should be a great cry throughout the land of Egypt, such as was not like it before, but on the other hand, against the children of Israel, not a dog shall make a sound. So now we can get a very beautiful understanding of this verse. Really what this means is that whenever we're able to differentiate between the highest part of ourselves, here symbolized by the Israelites, and the lower part of ourselves, and make the right choice and overcome our enslavement to our animal soul, to our base desires, and really call the bad part, the wicked part, by its name, and identify the positive part, and we're able to make this differentiation, then the positive dog, the inner heart, the deepest level of the heart, is very quiet. So there's a kind of stillness, there's a kind of silence that on the deeper level of the heart, when it identifies truth, when finally a separation is made between my higher self and my lower self, the part of me that is really doesn't want me to really advance, it constrains me and limits me, it wants me to remain a child, to remain obsessed with little things, with lowly things. Once I'm able to see that for what it is, and to identify to take the Israelite out of Egypt, to take the godly soul out of the divine soul, it's characterized, or one of its marks is that the heart is quiet. There's a certain quiet there. And we can even say now, and by the way, another beautiful thing here, not a dog shall make a sound against man or beast. Why? Because the higher level of the heart is above both the intellect, that's symbolized by man. Man is intellect, that's what distinguishes man. And it's also higher than the beast here being the animal soul, the external aspect of the heart, the outer heart. The fact that a dog doesn't bark against neither man nor beast, doesn't make a sound, means that it rises above all the sounds of the beasts and the sounds, and also the human voice, the intellectual voices, something far deeper that tells us you're doing the right thing, you're making the right choice. If I'm quiet, it means that's a good choice. So when we're making a choice, and we have to see what kind of voices or silences we hear within ourselves. And the beautiful thing we have here is that the silence of the dogs, of these positive holy dogs, is juxtaposed or is put up against the great cry coming from Egypt. Now Egypt here, it corresponds to the lower dogs, to the external heart, the constraints that are enslaving our hearts. So really what he's saying is this, that when you're about to make a good choice, when you're about to separate between your lower self and your higher self, then the outer heart, the external level of the heart, is going to cry out very hard. Those dogs, the lower negative dogs, the dogs that are full of appetite and desires and are never satiated, never happy, they never want you to make a good decision, they're going to bark like crazy. They're going to cry like they never cried before, like it's the end of the world, because they know you're about to make a very, very important and holy choice. And their purpose is to try and prevent you from doing that. So they're going to cry like never before and never again. They're going to say, no, it's the worst thing you can do. But you shouldn't listen to them. You should tell yourself, okay, that's the part of me that's now shouting and telling me I shouldn't do this. Which dogs are these? Oh no, that's the Egyptian dogs. That's the nefesh. That's my animal soul dogs. These are the dogs that I have to govern. I have to go up to my intellect and I have to shine light. And if I listen, if I try and find the Jewish dog, there's actually a book called The Jewish Dog. If I try to find the Jewish dog among the Egyptian dogs within me, again, the Jewish dog being my divine, the sound, the voice of my divine soul within the tumult of Egyptian external lower dog voices within me, or barks, then I can tell that this dog is quiet. Why is he quiet? It's quiet because it knows that's the right thing to do. It's sort of nodding quietly, saying, yeah, don't listen to those barks. Those are the Egyptian dogs barking. That's the external heart. But I'm your internal heart. I'm the deeper part of you. And I'm telling you, I'm nodding quietly. You're doing the right thing. Go ahead. Get out of Egypt. You're doing the right thing. And there was this teacher in Israel, this woman teacher. Her name was Yemima Avital. And I never knew her. And she wasn't really teaching Judaism or Torah, but she taught people how to sort of meditate and look into themselves and find the kind of inner quiet. So again, I'm not very familiar with her shita, but a lot of people quote her and owe much to her. And there is one sort of sentence that she said that's attributed to her, which is very fitting here. She said, "Makom sheyesh emet, sham halev shaket." Where in the place that truth resides, where there's truth, the heart is quiet. That's what she said. Where there's truth, the heart is quiet. So this is beautiful here. That the external. So we can complete this, and we can say that the external heart, the external level of the heart, the outer heart, isn't quiet at all. It's barking like crazy. But the inner heart, the deeper heart, the heart of hearts, like we said, the Jewish dog, is very quiet, and we have to identify that stillness. So the silence of the dog, the silence of the deeper heart, is something to be looked at. Now, of course, all this idea. Let me go on to the next. Hang on. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so the final slide we have here is a beautiful description from the first book of Kings, and it talks about the prophet having this incredible divine revelation, and the divine revelation goes like this. And he said, the angel says to him, "Come out and stand." This is the prophet Eliyahu, and he says, "Stand on the mountain before God, before Hashem." And lo, Hashem passed by, and then he tells him, there was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks, by the power of Hashem. But Hashem was not in the wind. Lo baruach Hashem. It's not in the wind. The wind is very impressive, but Hashem isn't there. After the wind there shall come an earthquake. But Hashem is not in the earthquake. Lo barash Hashem. And then after the earthquake there shall come a fire. That's again very impressive, very loud, very overwhelming. But Hashem is not in the fire. Hashem is in something that's beyond the wind and beyond the earthquake and beyond the fire. It's in something called a subtle sound of silence. That's really the source of the famous Simon Garfunkel song, The Sounds of Silence, Kol Dmama Daka. The subtle sound of silence is really the sound of the inner heart that is beyond all the noise, all the white noise and the fire and the wind of the outer heart that's shouting, no, don't do this, and barking at you like crazy. But you have to listen beyond the noise of beyond the external noise of the outer heart. You have to tune in and listen to the inner voice of the inner heart, which is like those dogs in Egypt that were silent and at peace and at seeing the truth come out, and seeing the divine element finally be freed, the divine soul finally be freed from the constraints that plague us every day, of our animal soul, of those negative lowly dogs. So that's our shir for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this shir, if you like all these classes, then please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Patreon is a site that helps, a platform that helps independent creators do their thing. So you can consider that. And thank you very much. And I'll see you next week. Oh, and please like the video if you liked it. Hit like and subscribe to the channel. That also really helps. So long.